Hello, everyone. This is another study of Oahspe.com podcast video, copyright for YouTube. Today's subject is solar vortex and extrasolar planets. And I'm on the study of Oahspe.com page called More Science, Astronomy, Physics. And it says, Oahspe, Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, Chapter 11, Verse 6. There is no such thing as separating science and religion. To obtain knowledge and to do good, these are valuable. Oahspe, Book of Knowledge, Part 1, or Chapter 1, Verse 30. Te, or Tai, said, I will reason with thee, Jehovah, for all I know shall be based on science and truth. From thine own perfection am I inspired to this end, and my talents shall be strengthened by pursuing the exact sciences of all the known truths. Neither will I put away mine own judgment, nor accept for truth that which is at variance with thy established laws. Talents shall be strengthened by pursuing and learning physics, astronomy, mathematics, physical anthropology, neuroscience, and genetics. Definition of exact science: a science as physics, chemistry, or astronomy, whose laws are capable of accurate quantitative expression. The definition of a vortex from Wiktionary.org. Vortex. Vortex, plural, vortexes or vortices, a whirlwind, whirlpool, or similarly moving matter in the form of a spiral or column. Helical definition from dictionary.com. Helical definition, pertaining to or having the form of a helix, spiral. And on this website, which I'll click the link to, universetoday.com, is the solar system really a vortex? Universe Today, Space and Astronomy News. This was December 18th, 2013. Is the solar system really a vortex? Is the solar system really a vortex? The short answer, no. Not in the way the popular animated GIF insinuates, at least. And this animated gift scrolling down right there, Solar System Vortex gift by djsadu.com, which I've shown in previous videos from djsadu.com. Now, you can click on this link on studyofoahspe.com and read more from this website, but I'm going to go back. And on that website, a skeptic, a person skeptical of the use of the word vortex to describe our solar system says, quote, you can get helical motion without the particles in it interacting, like in the solar system. But in a vortex, the particles interact through drag and friction. And there's also a link underneath that from ucla.edu, Solar Wind Interact Magnetosphere. And I'm going to try to show you that link on my desktop. And that's it right there. The solar wind interaction with the Earth's magnetosphere. A tutorial by C.T. Russell, Department of Earth and Space Sciences and Institute of Geophysics and Space Physics, University of California, Los Angeles. So it says abstract. The size of the terrestrial magnetosphere is determined by the balance between the solar wind dynamic pressure and the pressure exerted by the magnetosphere, so on and so forth. But here's the website to that link from my page, and you can read. You can click on the. You can visit the website and click on the link and read more if you want. But I'm going to go back. And right there, underneath, it says there is drag of the solar wind on planetary magnetospheres. The solar wind interacts with the magnetospheres of planets in the solar system. So here is scientific sources that address the question of the skeptic who said that you can get helical motion without the particles in it interacting, like in the solar system. But in a vortex, the particles interact through drag and friction. So this person was insinuating that in the solar system there is no interaction between the planets and the particles in the solar system through drag and friction. But here I'm pointing out from scientific sources that say there is drag of the solar wind on planetary magnetospheres. The solar wind interacts with the magnetospheres of planets in the solar system. Solar wind drags out the night side magnetosphere to possibly 1,000 times Earth's radius. This extension of the magnetosphere is known as the magnetotail. Many other planets in our solar system have magnetospheres of similar solar wind influenced shapes. And I'm going to click on that link. And there, that link is from nasa.gov. Right up here, nasa.gov/public dot /IEX Explorer /missions from November 2011. So scrolling down, Right there it says background. Magnetism is force in nature that is produced by electric fields in motion, so on and so forth. And then it says right here, the exact nature and source of the sun's magnetic field are areas of ongoing research. Turbulent motions of charged plasmas in the sun's convective zone clearly play a role. Then scrolling down, it says the shape of the Earth's magnetosphere is the direct result of being blasted by solar wind. Solar wind compresses its sunward side to a distance of only 6 to 10 times the radius of the Earth. Solar wind drags out the night side magnetosphere. Let me repeat that, because we're talking about interaction through drag and friction. Solar wind drags out the night side magnetosphere to possibly 1,000 times Earth's radius. This extension of the magnetosphere is known as the magnetotail. Many other planets in our solar system have magnetospheres of similar solar wind influenced shapes. So this is from the website, which was the source of what I read previously. Right there. Also, okay, scrolling down, it says this drag force is always opposite to the object's motion, and unlike friction between solid surfaces, the drag force increases as the object moves faster. Air resistance, also known as drag, is a force that is caused by air. The force acts in the opposite direction to an object moving through the air. So in this case, this is from the definition drag physics from Simple English Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. So clicking on that link, and it show you the web page where I got that definition from. In fluid dynamics, drag, sometimes called resistance, is a force which tends to slow the movement of an object through a liquid or gas. As a moving object pushes the liquid or gas out of the way, the fluid pushes back on the object. This drag force is always opposite to the object's motion, and unlike friction, and so on and so forth. This is what I read to you, and this is the page where it came from. Now clicking back. So that's talking about drag and friction, unlike friction, but drag, um, using examples of like air. But when you're dealing with the solar vortex or the solar wind, you're talking about a plasma, which is a gas, but a gas which is affected by magnetic fields, the fourth state of matter, or when you heat a gas to such a high temperature, it is known as a plasma. So the same thing that applies to air and drag would apply to a plasma and drag. And the magnetosphere is also a plasma or contains plasma. And in this image right here on my website, it says when drag applied to a particular shape. So you can see that round shape and the drag applied to it, how it flows, the air flows over it, kind of like in the wind tunnel effect when they test automobiles. Well, that's very similar to this image, scrolling down, this scientific image of the solar wind and its drag effect on the Earth's magnetosphere or the vortex of the Earth. You see how the solar wind plasma particles flow around it, similar to the wind flowing around a particular shape. Very similar. And right below that, I wrote solar wind vortex. Quote, solar wind flows through space with gusting turbulence and swirling vortices. That quote came from ScienceDaily.com. Clicking on that link, bringing up the web page. Right there, Science Daily. It says your source for the latest research news. ScienceDaily.com. On this page, it talks about how a team of scientists led by the Heliophysics Group at Southwest Research Institute has used observations of comet Inke's tail using NASA's Solar and Terrestrial Relations Observatory, revealed that the solar wind flows through the vacuum of interplanetary space much as the wind blows on Earth. Not smoothly, but with gusting turbulence and swirling vortices. It does use the word vortices. Revealed that the solar wind flows through interplanetary space much as the wind blows on Earth, not smoothly, but with gusting turbulence and swirling vortices. And this was published in the Astrophysical Journal on October 13, 2015. So going back, to the study of Oahspe.com website. It says here, does the Earth experience friction from solar winds in its orbit? The solar wind from the sun does have a very dramatic effect on Earth, or more specifically on Earth's magnetosphere. What would normally be an almost spherical globe surrounding our planet is blown and stretched to many times its original width and resembles a foxtail more than a sphere. Momentum from solar radiation is mostly deflected by the magnetosphere, but a small fraction of it is absorbed into the Earth. This outward force actually pushes the Earth into a slightly wider, farther from the sun orbit than it would occupy if there were no solar wind. And this was from Reddit.com. Ask Science comments: does the Earth experience friction from solar? So there you have it. I've provided scientific sources that shows the interaction between the solar wind and the magnetospheres of the planet, where there is drag and friction. I'm going to click on that link. Does the Earth experience friction from solar winds in its orbit? And right here it says, the solar wind from the sun does have a very dramatic effect on Earth, or more specifically on Earth's magnetosphere. What would normally be an almost spherical globe, and this is what I read earlier, so I don't need to continue reading that, but so there's the answer to the scientific answer to, is there interaction going on inside the solar system between the solar wind and the magnetospheres of the planets, like you would have in a vortex? And the answer is yes. Now right here it says, February 2nd, 2011. A vortex is a rotating region of fluids, such as, for example, a tornado or da 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 da. Move move with the fluid and are dispersed by the action of viscosity. That's from thermopedia.com. And I'm going to click on that. Thermopedia, Guide to Thermodynamics, Heat and Mass Transfer and Fluids Engineering. Vortices, that's the subject. And that's where I read you. And this is the source from what I just read to you about vortices. And right below that, I wrote frictional viscous interaction of solar wind and planetary magnetosphere. Frictional, so there's the friction. Viscous, which a vortex is a viscous fluid. Interaction, there's the interaction right there, of solar wind, which is the solar system, the wind of the solar system, the solar vortex, and planetary magnetospheres. So interaction between different parts of the solar system. Frictional interaction. And below that it says Oxford and Hines introduced the concept of viscous interaction between the solar wind and the magnetosphere. This model is shown schematically in figure 14.9. Plasma in the outside boundary layer of the magnetosphere and let me read that again. Plasma in the outside boundary layer of the magnetosphere and in the magnetically connected high latitude ionosphere flows in the anti-sunward direction as if dragged, in quotes, dragged by frictional interaction with the shocked solar wind in the magneto sheath. Frictional interaction with the shocked solar wind in the magneto sheath. And that's from Physics of the Space Environment, page 293. And I'm going to click on that link from Google Books to show you where I got that quote from. And right there, as you can see, what I just previously read to you, there it is. And there's the book, name of the book right there. Physics of the Space Environment. So scrolling down. So scrolling down right there, it says solar magnetic field. If I click on that link, and there it is, solar magnetic field lines and solar wind. So right there, those spiral shape of the solar system, solar wind, is the magnetic field lines. And there you can see orbit of Neptune. This is very similar to an illustrated plate inside of Oahspe that shows the solar vortex. This is from mhhe.com/phys.sci/astronomy. So it's a modern scientific source that validates what is in Oahspe about the solar vortex. And then I'll read more from my website right here. It says Oahspe says the sun has a vortex that stretches throughout the solar system. Scientists have some knowledge of the sun's vortex. They call it the solar wind or the solar magnetic field or the heliosphere. Page 229 of the book, The Sun, Our Star, by Robert W. Noyes, says, streams of solar wind rotate past the earth like a giant pinwheel. Oahspe Book of Jehovah, chapter 3, verse 7 says, a great vortex created I for the sun. The sun vortex I cause to rotate. Oahspe says the sun's vortex rotates and spirals. Oahspe Book of Cosmogony, chapter 6, verse 3 says, by the roads of a comet do we discover the spirality of the curve of the master's vortex. In brackets I wrote sun's vortex. Oahspe plate 47, God's Book of Ben, calls the sun's vortex the cyclic coil. On page 198 of The Sun, Our Star by Noyes, it says, Ludwig Biermann in the early 1950s pointed to evidence having to do with comets, which it was later realized indicated that the sun's corona in fact was expanding outward. Sun's corona would be part of the sun's vortex or the sun's atmosphere. Page 201 says, magnetic fields in the solar wind carried out to the earth thus rotates, producing the Archimedes spiral pattern. Page 202 says, this picture of interplanetary magnetic spirals was verified by the magnetic probe IMP-1 as early as 1963. 82 years after Oahspe had a picture and description of the magnetic vortexian spiral of the sun's vortex. Page 208 of the Sun, Our Star says, we would move away from the sun into interplanetary space. We would have left the region of the corona where the magnetic fields determine its structure. Due to the outflow of solar wind, the magnetic field assumes the spiral structure we have already discussed. Following our compass needle outward along the magnetic spiral, we would watch the field become even weaker until eventually a point was reached far beyond the orbit of Pluto where the edge of the heliosphere is reached. Oahspe's God's Book of Ben, plate 46 and 47, shows the cyclic coil of the sun extending past Uranus and Neptune. Page 758 of World Almanac and Book of Facts, 1984 says, Neptune, currently the most distant planet from the sun, until 1999, is farther away than Pluto. Page 240 of The Universe by Asimov. By 1958, rocket experiments had proven the actual existence of this solar wind. Because the sun rotates on its axis once every 27 days, the sun's magnetic field out among the planets has a spiral shape. Researchers call it the Parker spiral after the physicist who first described it in 1957, 76 years after Oahspe. And if I click on right here, this link called Parker spiral, there it is, Parker spiral sun. So you get to see images of the Parker spiral. And there's actually one of the plates, plate 46 or 47 of the 1882 green Oahspe edition, showing the solar vortex in the spiral right there in 1881. So scrolling down, Oahspe in 1881 has a drawing of the Parker spiral that was not discovered until the early 1960s, more than 80 years after Oahspe was typed. In 1957, when a University of Chicago physicist Eugene Parker demonstrated that the solar corona, which has a temperature of 2 million degrees, cannot be static. The corona is so hot, Parker explained, that its gas is constantly evaporating away from the sun at supersonic speed. He predicted that there must be a solar wind, so on and so forth. You can read more of that on the studyofoasp.com website. And right here I wrote, the solar wind discovered by Eugene Parker in 1958 is a flow of lightweight ions and electrons which together comprise plasma thrown from the sun. The solar wind inflates a bubble called the heliosphere in the surrounding interstellar medium, ISM. And then there's links to the information that I have on the studyofoasp.com website. And this link was from helios.gsfc, that would be Goddard Space Flight Center.nasa.gov. The history of cosmic ray studies, 1950 to 1959. And right there, 1958 shows Eugene Parker's theory of the solar wind was first published. As the sun's magnetic field is carried out through the solar system by the solar wind. You can read more on that if you want on the website. Here's another link. The sun in space, magnetic fields, and the solar wind. It says there, the solar wind blows on the earth. Spiral patterns in interplanetary space. And going back, and that was from history.nasa.gov. And here's another link of nasa.gov about the solar system. And it says the solar system. Motions within the solar system. And there's a picture of the solar wind interacting with the, well, actually, that's a picture of the heliosphere, the sun's vortex, in its interaction with the interstellar medium, interstellar neural atoms. Plate 47 of Oahspe has an accurate drawing of the heliosphere and heliopause made in 1881, 77 years before the solar wind was discovered. Clicking on the link that says Tao Sang brings up the website from sacredtext.com. And there's plate 46, Tao Sang, from the Book of Cosmogony. And there's plate 47, dissection of the Great Serpent, which the solar system is called the Great Serpent. And I went on over that in previous videos. The Great Serpent name has to do with the shape and motion of the solar system, like a serpent or snake. But there again, you can see the spiral, which is actually a logarithmic spiral. And there's plate 48. The cyclic coil, which is a picture of the solar system or the solar vortex. Going back. And I'll click on this. It says images for cyclic coil, Oahspe. And there you have it from Google Images. More images of the cyclic coil and the solar system from Oahspe. Now, on my studyofOSP.com website, I go over plagiarism policy. Plagiarism policy. I have a link to the Department of English. This is from Penn State. Department of English, plagiarism policy, university and department plagiarism policy. And you can read more on that if you want to on the website. But I wrote, to avoid any claims of plagiarism, I have posted the following. Below, Vernon Wabchall posted the following information on February 15, 2015, the earliest date web.archive.org had recorded. In 1958, Eugene Parker discovered that a stiff wind blows incessantly from the sun, filling local interstellar space with ionized gas. National Geographic News, August 2003. Modern man discovered the solar wind, an outflowing of force from the sun that pushes a comet's tail away from it and affects the magnetosphere of Earth and other planetary bodies within the solar system. This discovery was made in the second half of the 20th century, more than 50 years after Oahspe described such a force as the currents of the solar vortex. Oahspe Book of Cosmogony and Prophecy, Chapter 2, verses 8, 9. At this age of the comet, it shows nearly the configuration of its own vortex, its tail being the invortexia axis. If the comet appears to the east of the sun, its tail turns eastward. If west of the sun, it turns westward. And that's from OahspeStandardEdition.com, Solar System Superhighway. And I went on to write, I had the same information above about Oahspe's description of the solar vortex, Eugene Parker, the discovery of the solar wind, and its effect on comets, posted on November 20th, 2008. The earliest date web.archive.org had recorded for that page. And I have a link to that. But more than 3 years earlier, on August 3rd, 2005, the earliest date web.archive.org had recorded. On another web page, I posted the same information. And I have a link to that. And there is a picture, an image from Oahspe plate illustrating the solar vortex and the planets and the sun. And there is from sadhu.com animated. There's a still of an animation of the sun and the planets, the solar system, spiraling through space. And right there at 118 of the video above, the sun is like a comet, showing the configuration of its own vortex, dragging the planets in its wake, equals Tau, or Tau Sang plate in Oahspe. And I have the link to the YouTube video right there. Now below that, I write Oahspe Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, Chapter 6. The Overlapping Waves of the Sun's Vortex, 1881 in Oahspe. The Overlapping Waves of the Sun's Vortex. And from news.discovery.com/space/history of space, Mars solar wind atmosphere, March 16, 2010. Scientists have identified a sort of double whammy solar superwave that is responsible for blowing away air from Mars and keeping its atmosphere thin, frigid, and downright inhospitable for any possible future travelers. The waves happen when one stream of solar wind is overrun and amped up by another, faster gale of solar particles. Edberg and his colleagues identified 41 doubled solar particle waves and solar powerful particle waves. When these two winds overlap and create pulses, and I'll repeat that again, highlighted in yellow there, it says these two winds overlap. Going back to what it says in Oahspe Book of Cosmology and Prophecy, it says the overlapping waves of the sun's vortex, 1881. And here in 2010, scientists discovered these two winds overlap and create pulses. Talking about the solar particle waves and solar powerful particle waves. They are called co-rotating interaction regions, CIRS, co-rotating interaction regions. This is dealing with the solar wind atmosphere. They write these two winds overlap and create pulses. In Oahspe in 1881, which was, let's see, 119 years earlier, Oahspe wrote overlapping waves of the sun's vortex. So there was a new discovery, a new scientific discovery, scientific fact that backed up what was in Oahspe about the overlapping waves of the sun's vortex. Now below that, solar system's nose found aimed at constellation Scorpius, published April 8th, 2011. A NASA spacecraft has uncovered the solar system's nose, which points in the direction our sun is moving through the Milky Way galaxy, astronomers say. The Voyager spacecrafts were the first to reach these outer boundaries, and they gave us very localized information, said study leader Nathan Schwartman of the University of New Hampshire. See, solar system is bullet shaped. So NASA spacecraft has uncovered the solar system's nose. And there you can see images right there on the left from Oahspe showing the bullet-shaped nose shape of the solar vortex compared to a bullet. And of course that was in 1881. And this article was published in 2011 about the solar system's bullet-shaped nose. So clicking on the link, okay, that just shows the bullet shape. The study authors are still puzzling out what this and other IBEX data tells us about the sun's overall trajectory. But it looks like the sun may be following a short wave-like path that takes it above and below the galactic plane a few times during each orbit around the galaxy center. So, anyway, there's another scientific fact and discovery about what was written in Oahspe over 120 years before. And that was from nationalgeographic.com. Let's see, dealing with the sun nose. The shape of the solar system's nose. Yeah, right there. Solar system's nose found. So going back. Underneath that, I write John Ballou Newborough in 1881 drew a picture of the solar system's bullet shaped nose 130 years before the Voyager spacecraft reached these outer boundaries of the solar system, sending back information about the nose. Scrolling down. Now, right here it says analysis by James May of California, plate 40 from Oahspe analysis. The significance of this plate shows that there are phalanxes in proximity of our own, and that they cross the orbit of our own solar system at the node point shown in the plate. In Newborough's time and until only recently, have any planets been discovered in other solar systems? Today, there have been numerous planets discovered orbiting other stars, and this list continues to grow. Such are other solar systems, just as OSB has told us that there are. Such are other solar systems, just as OSB has told us that there are. That's from plate 40. He's referring to plate 40 Serpent's orbit, which shows 8 orbits of solar systems with planets in them. An extrasolar planet or exoplanet is a planet outside the solar system. A total of 859 such planets in 676 planetary systems, including 128 multiple planetary systems, have been identified as of January 15, 2013. The Kepler mission has detected over 18,000 additional candidates, including potentially 262 habitable ones. In the Milky Way galaxy, it is expected that there are many billions of planets, at least one planet per star, resulting in 100 to 400 billion exoplanets. Almost all of the planets detected so far are within our home galaxy, the Milky Way. However, there have been a small number of possible detections of extragalactic planets. Astronomers at the Harvard Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics reported in January 2013 that at least 17 billion Earth-sized exoplanets are estimated to reside in the Milky Way galaxy. On April 21st, on 21st April 1992, radio astronomers Alexander Wolf-Susan and Dale Frail announced the discovery of two planets orbiting the pulsar PSR 1257 plus 12. This discovery was confirmed and is generally considered to be the first definitive detection of exoplanets. In 1992 was when man first discovered planets orbiting a star in another solar system, the first discovery of a planet outside of our solar system. This discovery verified and confirmed Oahspe and was made 111 years after Oahspe was typed. There is a wealth of gems in Oahspe, just waiting to be discovered. I ceased to be amazed with this book ever since I discovered it in 1947 while in the service. That was James May, 7/7/2010. Now going to another page on the studyofoahspe.com website called Extra Solar Planets, Savorcom Light Speed. I have a list of some of the extrasolar planets talked about in Oahspe. Oahspe Book of Safa, M. Hawk 25 says, angels, in brackets I put men, once lived on other corporal, in brackets physical worlds. So that's another scientific information from the Book of Safa, saying that angels, men, once lived on other corporal or physical worlds. Oahspe Book of Af, son of Jehovah, chapter 3, verse 21. Agar of the order of Achchav, son of Jehovah, from the corporal star Goddard. See, that's another, this was an angel or man from another corporal star in another solar system, an extrasolar planet called Goddard, called Goddad in Oahspe, Goddad. Verse 22, Hogi of the corporal star Alanx. Verse 23, and I'm not going to say their names, but I'll read from where it says they're from. Of the corporal star Terwig. Verse 24, of the corporal star Hietz. Verse 26, Neo, god of Lun, risen from the corporal star Si Itai, Sisi, from the corporal star Ithmule, however that's pronounced. Goddess of man, raised from the corporal star Mem. Goddess of Kal, raised on the corporal sun Nitz of the serpent Tan. So right there, Oahspe is saying this angel or man was raised from another corporal sun in a different solar system called Tan. Fiatasi, goddess of Lubbock, raised on the star Planza. Oahspe Book of Lika or Lika, chapter 1, verse 9. Lika or Lika was sprung from the corporal star Atos, which traversed the roads Yatus Kuwin of the South Circuit of Thoisi, the vortex of another far-off sun. So there it's talking about the Etherian god Lika, or Lika, came from the corporal star Atos, which was located in another solar system, another far-off solar system. Oahspe Book of Phragapati, chapter 3, verse 5. Chi Sin, brought forth from the star Ender. OSB Book of Lika. Newly raised brides and bridegrooms from the star Kagados. Kagados. Extrasolar planet with human life. OSB Book of Fragapati, Chapter 1, Verse 2. The spirits of darkness rescued from Unhawitchata, a prolific world, bringing forth imperfect human souls too abundantly for the quality. Here in OSB 1881, OSB mentions 13 extrasolar planets that I have found so far that had human, genus Homo, life, with water, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, proteins, and DNA, etc., on them at one time. 1992 was when scientists first discovered an extrasolar planet, and that's from wikipedia.org, extrasolar planet. So OSB in 1881 described and named extrasolar planets in other solar systems, which would have been, let's see, do the math, which would have been 113 years after they were first discovered, extrasolar planets. And underneath that, in the OSB Book of S, Daughter of Jehovah, Chapter 8, Verse 15, Lith Abacathavra, an Orion chief of 240,000 years, said, Verse 15, I have seen many corporal worlds arrive at the Cosmon era. So not only does OSB say that there's other corporal worlds in other solar systems, but they go through the same cycles and arrive at Cosmon just like the Earth does. Verse 18. On all the planetary worlds it is ever the same. Certain four false gods rise up to possess the corporal worlds and her heavens. So you can read more from this webpage on studyofosb.com. But that'll do it for this podcast. Thank you for tuning in, listening, and watching. And stay tuned for another studyofosb.com podcast video.